Hey everyone, Jim Brees here from GreenGrowth CPAs, and today we're going to be talking about a very, very important topic, a compliance topic that many cannabis business operators are overlooking too frequently, right? So we're going to talk about Form 8300, and in this video, we're going to talk about everything cannabis operators need to know about Form 8300. Again, my name is Jim Brees, the Chief Marketing Officer here at GreenGrowth CPAs. To make this a little bit more timely and to really give you the gravity of what's going to be happening here is that on MJ Biz Daily, I saw an article about a former IRS attorney warning of upcoming tsunami of marijuana-related 280E audits. If you read through the article, near the bottom of the article, it talks about how the IRS chooses to play hard-nosed as possible, and it could result in huge investigations into past all-cash dealings because any payment over $10,000 requires a filing of a Form 8300 to disclose such payments to the IRS. So as you understand, cannabis is a pretty much all cash or cash heavy business. And so you're going to be filling out a lot of these forms if you're staying in compliance. So I want to review all the information you need to know about Form 8300. But before we get started, I need to let you know that the information contained in this presentation is meant for guidance purposes only and not as professional legal or tax advice. And further, it does not give any personalized legal, tax, investment, or any business advice in general. So let's go over today's agenda just so you know what we're going to be covering in this video. So first, we're going to talk about the importance of Form 8300. What is Form 8300? The form overview, we're going to walk through a little bit on that. Then cannabis companies in Form 8300, why you guys need to really pay attention to this and not just sweep it under the rug. We'll talk about relevant transactions that need to be filed for Form 8300, suggested standard operating procedures for Form 8300 in your cannabis company, and then some additional tips on this form and how to really make the most of optimizing this in your SOPs, in your daily accounting, and all the things you need to know for your cannabis company. So again, recently our tax experts have heard reports of cannabis operators being penalized for failing to submit an IRS tax form 8300. So the IRS has been auditing cannabis businesses in Colorado to make sure they're completing Form 8300 because the cannabis industry, again, is heavily cash-based, and the IRS is strict about targeting cannabis companies for compliance with their many forms and regulations and all these things that are going on at the IRS. So from their database at the IRS and also these other state databases that make cannabis companies register and make that information public, the IRS is very much aware of what companies participate in the cannabis industry, and as a result, they can target their 8300 audits or any audit at that matter to this lucrative cannabis market. And penalties can range from $100 per reportable transaction all the way up to $25,000 per transaction. And cannabis operators, you need to listen to this. It's very important. You may also face charges under money laundering laws if you hit a certain level of cash transactions without filing a Form 8300. So the more successful you become, the higher your risk is, so you have to really pay attention to this form. Now it seems there's some confusion in the industry regarding this particular requirement to the detriment of the businesses all around the country, not just Colorado or California, anywhere within the United States. And we can outline the policies and procedures that cannabis operators need to use to train their employees and prove that they have exercised due diligence in relation to the Form 8300 in large $10,000 or more cash payments. So in this video, we're going to talk about what you need to know to avoid gross negligence charges in case of an audit. So let's just answer the question, what is Form 8300? I probably said it 15 times before I explain what it is, but IRS Form 8300 was instituted in response to the federal government's concern over money laundering after 9/11. The form must be submitted by any business that receives $10,000 or more in cash in a single transaction or multiple related transactions. Form 8300 does not need to be submitted for personal checks, cashier's checks, bank drafts, traveler's checks, or money orders over $10,000. Essentially, this form needs to be filled out anytime your business collects $10,000 or more in cash. And this form does not need to be completed in a scenario where this amount of cash is collected from giving to a person from another person, right? Only in a business sense where there's a business entity involved. Even if it's for a sale. For example, when you purchase a car off of Craigslist from person to person and there's no corporation involved, that doesn't need to be filed as a Form 8300. So as you see on the screen now, this is what the Form 8300 is. It's a 2-page form, and it is a reporting document, okay? There's a few sections here. You got about 6 sections here where you need to fill out information, and this should be done during the transaction time. Don't wait till after, because if you don't have one of these important pieces of information, it's an incomplete filing. An incomplete filing is better than not filing at all, but get this information and show that confidence to the people that you're dealing and doing business with, right? Because $10,000 is not a lot of money in the cannabis space when you're doing millions of dollars in business. That could be, very easily every day you'd have to fill one of these forms out. But that's just what we have to do as cannabis and all cash business operators. So to go over the sections real quickly here, part 1 is the identity of the individual for whom the cash was received, the person on whose behalf this transaction was conducted, the description of the transaction, and method of payment. You have the business that received the cash for part 4. Then on page 2, if there's multiple parties, fill out those multiple parties there. So it's not very complicated. Again, it's just a basic filing requirement, but failure to do this filing can result, again, in huge penalties and even money laundering issues and litigation against you or your company. So really keep a close eye on this. As we do some of our CFO onboardings, we peel through the books, we look at things, we're going to say, okay, well, show me all the Form 8300s for these 72 relevant transactions. And then when we get operators that look at us and say, well, we don't have them, we didn't even know we needed to fill them out. Ignorance does not absolve you from having to do this. You still have to do this. So whoever is your controller, your CFO, your accounting person in-house needs to let you know that you need to do this. And if not, you can also work with GreenGrowth CPAs. We have our outsourced CFO service to actually make sure you're staying compliant in all of your cash transactions, help you with your accounting, and a myriad of other things to have to do with the cash and the accounting within your business. But that's the Form 8300 in a nutshell. You can visit the IRS website to find more information, to actually look at that form, and then look at all the information they have that explains how to fill that out. I don't want to go too deep into that. So why do cannabis operators need to use Form 8300? If it's not apparent by now, let me re-explain it to you in another term here. So cannabis companies are being targeted by the IRS for failing to use Form 8300 properly. The authorities know that this is a cash-heavy industry and are taking advantage of many operators' lack of experience to institute steep fines and heavy penalties. Form 8300, again, was put into place to combat money laundering, tax evasion, and other criminal activities associated with cash-based transactions. So protect your business by instituting robust standard operating procedures around completing Form 8300. This will help your employees maintain compliance and keep your business safe. That's the most important thing. You're trying to preserve the integrity of your business and not fall, just because of some simple IRS form. It's not very difficult to fill out, but it can have huge consequences if you brush over it. So let's just review some relevant transactions that require a cannabis operation to file a Form 8300. So you have escrow arrangement contributions, pre-existing debt payments, negotiable instruments purchases, reimbursement of expenses, making or repaying a loan, sale of goods or services, including cannabis and cannabis products. And if it's a non-cannabis product, say your cannabis company sells things other than cannabis, right? If you're one of those restaurants out in West Hollywood now that can do food, and maybe someone comes in and does a very big party and pays in cash, you need to file a form for that. Sale of real or intangible property, rental of real or personal property, exchange of cash for other cash, and custodial trust contributions. This is just a short list. There are probably more, but again, anywhere where there's $10,000 or more changing hands from a person to a business or a business to a business is when you need to report a Form 8300. So let's just discuss how to create a standard operating procedure for Form 8300 in your cannabis company. Now, standard operating procedures are critical to maintaining compliance as you hire employees and grow your business, right? It's not going to always be you and your two co-founders. You're going to have to hopefully grow your business, hire more people, push down responsibilities to other people, and having a set of SOPs or standard operating procedures, make sure things are done the way you would want them to be done. And Form 8300 requires its own set of procedures to make sure you aren't penalized by the IRS. So there are 3 basic steps here that I want to review for you. Again, this is not the most robust SOP. I'm just giving you some color and context to what that should look like for your company. So step 1, gather the customer information. So first, your team needs to collect a certain amount of information from the customer paying that $10,000 or more in cash. And the information you need to report includes the first and last name of the individual making the cash payment, the taxpayer identification number or social security number of the individual making that cash payment, their driver's license ID number and which government entity it was issued by, the legal entity name of the customer or business, the taxpayer identification or FEIN of the customer or business, and then the address of the customer or business, right? So give your team direction as to where to securely store that customer information for future reference. So if you have a consistent customer that comes quite often, make sure that you are getting that information down so they know, hey, customer 721 came in, gave us the cash. Your internal people can look into a database that you may have and says, all right, this is the relevant information for that customer for our Form 8300. Now you move to step 2, collect payment information. So make sure you get a cash receipt and store it with a second person who has access to the safe and maintains the cash log. Outline the proper checks and balances for making sure the person who collects the cash and the person who logs the cash are separate people or separate entities maintaining accountability and checks and balances. After receiving the cash receipt, a second person must do a few things. Verify that a receipt is provided or a signed invoice for the shipping manifest as proof of cash receipt being received. Ensure that key information for filing Form 8300 is properly logged and saved in a secure filing system, and log into the cash log the following information: their invoice number, the customer name, and the cash amount that is received. Once you get all that together, then step 3 is best practices for regular compliance. So your compliance officer, whether in-house or some kind of external outsourced person, and a cash custodian should regularly review Form 8300 transactions. Check cash logs to see if there are payments that trigger the Form 8300 reporting requirement, and make sure all the information has been saved to complete the 8300 form. And set up calendar reminders to make sure that these payments, the information around these payments, are submitted on time. And Form 8300 should be submitted weekly if necessary, because if you're moving a lot of cash, you probably have a lot of these. Don't wait. I believe you have about 15 days of receiving payment to file this form, which would be considered a timely basis. So if you're submitting the forms manually, you send it to the IRS down in Detroit. There's an address, you can look that up and send that form over. Before you do that, make sure you're scanning all these forms into your computer, put it into your Dropbox, your Google Drive, your OneDrive, somewhere in the cloud, which you would call your data room, so you have proof that you did fill these forms out. And don't forget that your cannabis business must send through the correct taxpayer ID number or social security number of the person you received the cash payment from when submitting the form. And again, filing the Form 8300 within 15 days of receiving payment is considered a timely basis. And note that if that 15th day falls on a weekend or a legal holiday, the due date is following business day. So let's just get into a last few tips of filing Form 8300. So in addition to the best practices we outlined in your standard operating procedure on the previous slide, our tax experts had the following recommendations to help you file Form 8300. First, you should sign up for a BSA e-filer. And this is an online portal that supports electronic filing of Bank Secrecy Act forms, the BSA forms, okay? And through this system, you can add a customer, transfer information, and make the entire process more efficient for your business. And on this, when you're e-filing on a Mac computer, we've noticed that if you use the Firefox browser and make sure you have Adobe installed, the FinCEN Networks works best with those tools. Sometimes if you have a different configuration, it just doesn't work. So little quick tip for you on there. And then what if you don't have the key pieces of information, right? What if you forgot to grab a piece of information? So first, it's not possible to e-file without all the required information. So if you are missing the FEIN, the SSN, or the legal name, for example, you must manually complete the 8300 forms and mail them in. The IRS prefers that you still file an incomplete 8300 rather than not filing it due to missing details. Lastly, what if you're filing an old or overdue form? So our tax experts, our CPAs, and the people within our team recommend that you mail the form with tracking and attach a statement explaining the circumstances for late submission. Indicate that your company was not aware of the requirement and that since finding out about the requirement, you have developed policies and procedures to comply with this requirement and that all owners and employees have been trained on these standard operating procedures. It doesn't mean you're not going to get a penalty, but at least having some type of explanation is going to be helpful or hopefully beneficial to you and your circumstance. Be proactive if you're worried about being penalized for an 8300. Remember, the goal of the form is to prevent money laundering. So do everything you can to show that you run an above the board business with a legitimate interest in serving your customers and paying your taxes. So to tie this all together, to protect your business, go through your books and file forms for any cash payments over $10,000 that you may have missed. Store all those Form 8300s for up to 5 years in case of any audit that may happen. And note that cannabis companies are required to notify customers that they have filed a Form 8300, and you must do this on or by January 31st of the following year. So for example, if you file a Form 8300 in this year, 2019, you need to let that customer know if it's a transaction relevant to them. Say they paid you that $11,000, you need to let them know by January 31st, 2020 that you filed a form for that. Remember, the penalty to not file on a timely basis is at least $100 per occurrence. So if you gross more than $5 million per year in gross receipts, the IRS can charge in penalties for not filing up to $500,000. Like, this is real money. So make sure you get used to filing this form regularly. So thank you for taking the time to understand and listen to this video about Form 8300. Hopefully it has brought you some value and understanding around the requirements and the reporting aspects of this form. And if you need help with filing your Form 8300s or cleaning up any of your compliance or bookkeeping, then please reach out to GreenGrowth CPAs. We'd love to help you out. You can visit our website at greengrowthcpas.com or give us a call at 800-674-9050 and let us know how we can help you out. If it's for the Form 8300, tax compliance, or anything cash and cannabis, we can help you out. Again, one more time, you can reach out to us via our website at greengrowthcpas.com or give us a call at 800-674-9050. Thank you for listening. We appreciate your time. Have a great day, and we'll talk to you soon.